We've got Andy, Kendall, you, and Meg. And just remember, if there's any dissenting votes, we need to do a roll call. Yep. Andy, Meg, and Kendall, you're all co-hosts, so you should be able to unmute yourselves and turn on your video whenever you want.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
You good? Good. Logan, you ready? Let me just get it started.
Recording in progress.
Okay, I'd like to call to order the Town of Essex Selectboard meeting for Monday, April 20th, 2026. Quick reminder to silence your phones, and for those of you online, your microphones will be muted by default, and raise your hand to be recognized to speak. For second item on the agenda is agenda additions and changes. Are there any additions or changes from staff?
None from staff. We do have paper at your seat that Public Works will speak to, and Karen will be able to share her screen. This was an attachment that did not make it into the packet, but no changes to the agenda. I'm just getting word from Shannon that he is trying to log in but having trouble with Zoom, so I'm going to try to get a call-in number for him.
Okay.
And in the meantime, Kendall has his hand raised.
Kendall?
Yeah, I'd like to move the consent item E to the regular agenda, please.
Would you like that in any particular order?
Your choice. Your choice.
Okay, make that 6G. I don't believe anybody's here waiting. I think they're all renewals. Does that sound good?
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other additions or changes from the board?
No.
Okay, I'd take a motion to approve the amended agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor of the amended agenda, please say aye.
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 Okay, agenda is approved. Next item on the agenda is the public to be heard. Public to be heard is a time for residents to voice their concerns to the board. Please be civil. Please be brief. As a general rule, any comments longer than a couple of minutes may be a bigger item that could be warned as an agenda or sent in an email. Keep your cell phone silent, refrain from side conversations, and be respectful to staff and those speaking. Is there anybody who'd like to be heard for public to be heard? Doesn't look like there's anybody online. Nobody in the room. We'll move on to the consent agenda. Take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Moved by Meg. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Seconded by Andy. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, the consent passes. Okay, business items. First item on the business agenda is item 6A. It's an interview, a volunteer to serve on the Energy Committee. We have Rod Williams here. Come on up.
Good evening.
Thank you for coming tonight. If you could just take a couple minutes to tell us about yourself and why you're interested in serving on the Energy Committee.
Absolutely. I've been on the committee for a year now. You all appointed me last year, and it's been a good experience. I've appreciated the opportunity to provide input to the town on energy-related matters, and feel it's a good working group. When I came here last year, I was new. I'm still new. I was newer. I've been here 6 months, and now I've been here a year and a half. Wanted to get involved and found it to be a great way to get involved. And I related last year. I had some tangential professional background in energy-related matters in government. So I would certainly enjoy the opportunity to continue serving.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Are there any questions from the board?
I have a question. Yeah, well, I guess I have two questions. My first is, what's been maybe your biggest challenge so far serving on the board? Or on the committee, I'm sorry.
I would say the Energy Committee has a lot of things on its agenda. I think probably one of the biggest, most substantive is working on the energy plan. And I probably myself personally haven't had an opportunity enough to really dig into it and provide comment. So that's probably been my own personal biggest challenge with it. So yeah, that would be the answer to that question.
Okay. And then what about what's been the most rewarding?
I would say building the relationships with the other members of the committee. It's a really good group of people who are very dedicated to the cause of promoting energy conservation and better usage of energy. I've felt like I've fit right in with the people on the committee, and it's really been an enjoyable group to work with.
Great. Thank you. And I apologize that I'm not there. But I appreciate, your answers and your commitment to it.
Thank you.
Is there any other questions from the board?
This is Andy. First, I guess I want to say Rod is my next door neighbor, and I don't see any conflict with that, so I will continue to participate in the discussion and potential voting later. Rod, thank you for your service. Meg kind of covered the question I was going to ask you is what do you feel you've been able to contribute, and what was the most exciting part of it? Thank you for your responses, and see you around the hood.
You're welcome.
Kendall?
I was just going to note that I had a good conversation with Rod at the town meeting, and I'm looking forward to him continuing on the committee. I'm glad he's re-upping.
Thank you.
Shannon, do you have any questions for Rod?
Hey, thanks, Ethan. Rod, I'm sorry I can't be there in person with you today. Thanks so much for your service on the committee. I just wanted to ask, I know that the committee's had trouble filling seats in the past. Do you have any idea how we could work to get more people involved with the committee and a larger variety of membership across all sectors of society?
I wish I had more of an answer. I know one of the things that the committee has taken particular interest in is involvement from younger people, including a high school student. I think we've had some correspondence with one person who was at town meeting as well and made contact with us. And I don't know what the logistics of that are if we do have somebody at that level who's interested, if they can be appointed as a full member, or if there's a just sort of an ex officio type thing that can be worked out. And in terms of anyone else, it's something we end up talking about at every meeting, but we haven't come up with an answer to it yet. I just don't know. We've been out there at a lot of events. The committee goes to the fair. The committee was at town meeting. The committee was at community day in the fall. And certainly make contact with a lot of people who are interested in what we have there, mostly obviously in terms of opportunities for them to work towards energy conservation personally, and obviously get whatever financial benefits from that. But we haven't actually had anybody step up or seem interested in going, hey, yeah, that's neat. How do you get on that committee? So we're going to keep working at it, but I wish I had a better answer.
Well, I appreciate your thoughtful response and the work you're doing to tackle it. It's definitely something I'd love to see improved, but I think you're doing a great job in the committee.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Rod. As the normal chair question is, do you have any questions for us?
I don't think so.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time tonight. And the interview process is going to happen over the next couple months, and I think we're shooting for the end of June to make decisions and appointments. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, the next item on the agenda is business item 6B, consider approval of resolution regarding a municipal boundary adjustment with the town of Jericho. And I'll pass this over to Greg.
Yes, please. So Peter Ehrlich is here before you again. He came back last summer. It took us some time to pull together some research and devote some more attention to this. I'll let Mr. Ehrlich speak for himself in a little bit, but he had come in requesting a municipal boundary adjustment. He and his family are Essex residents, although they feel more like Jericho residents because they are at a property that is bisected by the municipal boundary. So their property is accessible only from Jericho, but the house itself is in the town of Essex. So they've approached the town about doing a municipal boundary adjustment. That would have to go to the legislature. My understanding is that the Jericho Selectboard has issued a resolution in favor of such an adjustment. The request was for the Town of Essex Selectboard to do the same. Staff has looked into it. All respects to Mr. Ehrlich and his family, we do not recommend pursuing the municipal boundary adjustment. We're afraid of just the precedent that it would set, allowing residents who have properties across two municipalities to kind of pick and choose where they want to be. It would be a lot of process, potentially for the town, potentially for the state. That could have other implications, tax and otherwise, just about shifting boundaries. We did some research, staff, I know Mr. Ehrlich has done some as well, that I'm sure he can speak to. From the town research, the municipal boundary adjustments that we have found were between two towns, and it was discrepancy over a large swath of land as opposed to individual lots. So there is some precedent for it on a larger scale, but we didn't find any on the smaller scale. So happy to take any questions on that or speak to staff's position, but I don't want to take away from Mr. Ehrlich either.
Is there any questions before we start, or would we like to hear from Mr. Ehrlich? Hearing none, I'll turn the floor to you.
Yeah. Thanks for the recap, Greg, and I think that's accurate and matching my understanding. I guess what I would add is sort of, I know there's not a lot of precedent. I wish, like, in the intervening time I could be like, oh, like, obviously this has happened before and for this reason. No, I'll admit it's fairly unique. I I guess I would just add that, like, this is, this is not a court. It's not solely based on precedent, but also, like, what makes sense. And this is a case where the house was built, at least to everyone's knowledge, including the surveyors at the time, in Jericho. For decades, it existed in Jericho. Then it sort of semi-magically shifted 100 feet when there was a resurvey. And although that is technically correct, it does not actually, like, make sense as far as borders go. And I think that making such a correction is worth doing, as I think the more accurate your borders are, the more naturally things flow, and the more it makes sense for the residents of both towns. And I think that, like, it's not that common that a house shifts due to a resurvey. And I guess I would just add, like, on a personal note, it has, like, very real effects for me and my family, where, like, I was had an opportunity potentially to join the select board of Jericho last year, and then we realized that, like, I didn't actually live in Jericho, which was as much to my surprise as anybody else's, and so that turned out not to be possible. So yeah, I guess I would just add to the grounds of, like, this is I think, yes, it's more work, and yes, it's, like, a long road to get there through the legislature and all that. But I wouldn't be pursuing it if I didn't think it was something that fundamentally made sense and made the boundary of the two towns something that was better for both towns. That's all I have.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
I have a question. I guess I and I think you spoke a little bit to it, Mr. Ehrlich, and I appreciate you being here. I'm curious, like, what does this actually change? It like, for what if we were to do this? What, from the way that you kind of live your life now, what would actually change? I don't know if the question that
I think, like, it would probably not change things like school district, although I'm not, it's going to be a decade or so before I have to worry about that. I think this really practically came to the pass where, like, I'm a member of the Jericho Energy Committee, and I was, through that, there was, like, as you guys may know, Jericho recently added 2 more select board seats. And I was invited to interview for that position, and then had to decline at the very last moment because we realized I didn't actually live in the town. So this was, very awkward for everybody, and it means that if I want to be active in Jericho, it's just not possible.
Okay, thank you.
Is there anybody else, or Greg's got his hand up here in the room? Okay, I'll go to Greg.
Just wondering, Mr. Ehrlich, if you could elaborate a little bit on the house at some point being in Jericho. Our research and our records were indicating that it had always been part of Essex, but curious as to what you had found.
Yeah. Maybe there's something there's a little divergent. My understanding from the records that I had was that the builders originally built 4 parcels, and they thought all of them were in Jericho. I know for a fact that no Essex permits were pulled, and that Jericho permits were pulled, for example. So, and you may have better information than I do. But in my understanding from those records were that they thought they were building the parcel was in both lots, but that the house itself was in Jericho.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions from the board? Oh, here's Shannon. Go ahead, Shannon. Sorry.
If I could jump in when there's a chance, I'd like to follow up on that.
I'm sorry, you're breaking up a little bit.
That was a chance to ask a question on that, or push it back to staff what they found and elaborate that. Reading the text, it seemed that the town of Essex has always been built. The town of Essex, there's never been any sort of public information or hearing held in which we claimed it back from Jericho. I just turned to Karen and Greg and see what their response would be on that.
Sure. Shannon, I think you were asking, and for those in the room too, what we had found as far as our research and our findings. Is that accurate?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, so we have a slide, a subdivision slide, dated 1977. It doesn't show where the house is, but based on it does include the Jericho Essex municipal boundary line. Looking at that, looking at where the house is surveyed or shown on the lot, it seems like the house would have been in Essex back then as well. I believe as our assessing cards, our tax records have also shown the house in Essex. I don't have those dates in front of me, but I believe going back quite some time.
Thank you.
Andy has had his hand up.
Andy, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask the exact same question that Shannon did, and I also wanted to express my concern about setting a precedent where anybody whose property straddles the boundary could pick and choose, could potentially come and pick and choose which municipality they pay taxes to, or because if we do it for one, we gotta consider it for others. And I think given the maybe it's questionable where the house was, but I think what I heard from staff and what was in the package is that the house has always been in Essex, and the mistake was made earlier by the developer. And I don't think that's justification for moving the boundary line.
Is there any other questions from the board? Kendall?
I would agree with what Andy says, with the exception that as the precedents have already been set where towns have adjusted an entire property line, I think that is the way to do it, not an individual parcel.
Is the board all set? I'll look to take some public comment.
I guess I just have one other question, and that was going to be kind of along the same lines of what Kendall said. My understanding is so part of the property that's owned is also in Jericho. However, the home sits in Essex. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
M Music, we're gonna unmute your microphone. If you could state your full name for the record, please.
Sure. Margaret Smith. I just had a couple of thoughts. I'm curious about how he figured out that the house was actually in Essex if he'd been assuming it was in Jericho all these years. And where has he been paying taxes?
Yeah, fair question. We figured this out when we went to talk to the town of Jericho, and we were like, "Hey, I was considering that select board position as I mentioned earlier, and then they sort of double checked, and they're like, wait a second, you don't actually live in Jericho." So we had been operating under this assumption for decades, honestly, which turned out to be wrong. So you can imagine our shock. But we do pay taxes in both towns. It's a split, I assume, pro rata based on square footage of the parcel that's in each town.
If there's any other comments from the public? Ken? Actually, if you could come up and state your full name, please.
Hi, Ken Signorello. So I was looking over the packet, and might I understand that there's a swath of land, 65 foot in width and a long distance, that is currently both in Essex and Jericho?
Greg?
Yeah, I would say it's more safe to say it's not in Essex and Jericho, so much as the state probably doesn't have the exact boundary line documented. So it's, I guess, unclear within that 65-foot swath where the boundary is.
I assumed it was because of the survey, resurvey. The old survey had one line and the new survey has a different line, and it turns out that they are like that.
Which old and new survey?
You know, the packet talks about the old survey, the 1800 survey, and then the 2000 survey. And that's,
Were those comments from?
no, it was in the documentation here, I think.
It's in the letter from Mr. Ehrlich.
That's where it was. Thank you. There were two surveys. I assume that's, so, you know, this is where gores come from. Everybody knows that, you know, when there's a survey error in our state, sometimes you end up with a triangle of land that either overlaps or is in nobody's municipality, and they turn it into a gore. And this, from the map that's included in the packet, it looks like that's what we've got here. And I think that that's another issue that's not related per se. But yeah, if there's a section of land that currently it's not clear if it's in a municipality or it's in both, that kind of needs to be resolved, as well as a decision on this issue, obviously. So that's what I'm seeing. I mean, it looks like it's 65 feet wide. Maybe somebody could explain what I'm looking at here if I'm misunderstanding it. Thank you.
Thanks. I just got a quick comment about that, but I think an easy question to be asked for that is, could we get some clarification from the state on who collects taxes for the 65-foot buffer?
We could probably look into the assessor
The
to
assessor's
answer that
office
question.
and get back to some information. I know that's outside of the request here, but it is a good point to get some clarification on.
Yeah, we can look into that. Staff didn't focus on it too much. That piece of it, when we're looking at it, the 65-foot question between Essex and Jericho, the house is still on the Essex side of that 65-foot piece, so that's why we focus more on the location of the house. Taxes are largely based on the house. The land is certainly a value of property taxes, but the homes are the bulk of the property taxes.
Awesome. Is there any other board member questions? Okay, hearing none, I'd kind of look for the will of the board, if there's any action to be taken or what the will is. Hearing no hands. Hearing no comment from the board. This item doesn't require action. Oh,
Oh, hands down. Kendall put his hand up and then down.
Kendall, are you good?
Yeah, I was just, I can't see the packet from where I am, so I was just wondering if a motion was required for this.
So actually, if you're going to reject a motion or turn it down, the process is that somebody should make a motion and then it would fail for lack of a second. Or if there's desire to take a full vote on it, there'd be a motion in a second and then a vote.
Okay.
Okay, then I would make the motion that we do not sign a resolution to make a change to the property line.
Is that okay? A negative motion? Is there a second? Andy, I see your hand.
We don't, typically frame and I'm surprised that the motion says not. I think usually we would vote for make it a positive motion, and then if you don't want it, vote it down. But I don't know. Are we okay with the?
Technically it is, and I apologize for the confusion in the recommendation. I was trying to get across that we recommend not doing that as staff, but I see the confusion.
I'm happy to withdraw the motion if it creates an issue, no problem.
But can I ask? I'd like to ask a question though. Is it clear if we do have a clean vote, that way the issue may not come? Is it more likely the issue won't come back if we have a definite vote?
I think it provides some clarity and yeah, some more clarity to it.
So I'll make the motion that the select board adopt the resolution in support of the municipal boundary adjustment with the town of Jericho.
Is there a second?
So it would fail for lack of a
Okay.
second.
So a motion fails with a lack of a second. I want to thank you for your time for coming in tonight. And
Yeah, I know you guys are very busy, so I appreciate taking the time to look into it.
thank you. Okay, that brings us to our next business item, item 6C, presentation and potential adoption of the Economic Development Strategic Plan. I believe there we have Tammy.
Hello. Let me get this over here. Okay. I think, is Lindsay on time? Yep. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start by saying we're going to be providing a presentation tonight on the draft Economic Development Strategic Plan. And I'll just provide a brief introduction and background on that for you. Lindsay is going to be doing most of the talking, and I'll introduce her. It was started prior with the prior Economic Development Coordinator, Jean O'Sullivan, who recently retired in January. And during that process of putting it out to bid, TPMA was the consulting firm that was selected to put together the plan. I took over for Jean in January, this being my first presentation to the Select Board in this new role. In March 2025, so a year ago, TPMA and the town conducted a community survey as part of this development study and collected 422 responses, which actually is a very decent sampling for our community. And my understanding is that Jean worked really hard to gather a lot of that participation. I've had an opportunity to connect with TPMA's senior consultant, Lindsay Blues, on this project, and she has presented the draft plan in different versions to the Economic Development Commission, to town staff, and have collected feedback along the way. I've kind of took the baton over from Jean in January, just in the very final lap of this project. So I think I've got a decent understanding of what they were trying to put forth. And I guess I would turn this over to Lindsay. Oh, I did want to mention too, we do have some EDC members in the audience. So maybe after the presentation, if anybody has any questions for me, EDC members, Lindsay, of course, please feel free to ask.
Awesome. Thank you, Tammy.
Yep.
Perfect. Thank you. Go ahead, Lindsay.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for allowing me to come this evening to present about our economic development strategic plan that we helped Essex to create. Just a second here, I've asked if we can perhaps provide Adriana with the ability to share screen. Great. Okay, wonderful. So TPMA is a national consulting firm. We specialize in economic development, workforce development, and evaluation. We've done economic development studies and strategies across the country, and Essex was a great experience for me. I've had the pleasure of leading and supporting many of these. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about our kind of process and the project purpose first of all, to build upon the previous work. So whenever we do an economic development strategic plan, we never want to start from scratch and pretend that we're building something brand new. We want to start with what is already existing and what is already happening and build upon that. So you all had done the 2024 town plan and ETC next, and we wanted to make sure that we integrated all of those actions within the context of this economic development strategic plan so that everything was in alignment. The next thing we wanted to make sure that we did was to really understand the current economic development status and the context of Essex and really kind of get to know a lot of the people involved in town. And we had a great time doing that. I'll talk more about that here in a little while. We also did what we call a SWOT analysis, which I'm sure all of you are pretty aware of. So assessing the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and really kind of narrowing in that analysis on the competitive advantages that Essex might have. And then the fourth purpose was to create that kind of framework with strategies, implementation steps, which is really key. We wanted to make sure that you had resources available, metrics, and you had assignments and timelines and things like that to really make sure that implementation was possible. Next slide. Okay, so here's kind of our project timeline, if you will. So we launched last year. We had a pretty lengthy discovery process in which we reviewed plans. We, looked at especially the town plan in depth. We, gathered lots of different data from sources that are either publicly available and also from, some other partners that we use to collect data. We did that survey that Tammy mentioned and conducted interviews. We did focus groups. We talked to your regional partners. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. And then we analyzed all that data. So we do that discovery, we talk to everyone, and then we kind of use the engagement piece to validate or challenge the data that we collected to see how experience matches up with the data. So then we analyzed everything and we created strategies through these strategic insight sessions that we conducted on site and also virtual to kind of develop these strategies out. We provided our expertise from our experience across the country and from our team, and then created this this recommended plan. Next slide. Okay. So whenever we're doing these, I like to talk about key considerations. So number one, we never look at economic development as a single thing. Economic development exists within the whole scope of everything that kind of makes up a community. So we take a really holistic view of economic development. You're going to see that within the strategies, but what you're also going to see in the strategies is specific to economic development. What can we do? What steps can we take? So limiting the scope, but within a holistic view of what economic development means. The next is to integrate approaches that were both qualitative and quantitative in nature, and incorporate those in with economic development best practices, again, that are collected over time. We wanted to be specific about what actions can be taken without being too prescriptive. So we want to make sure that we leave room for you all to adapt and be creative in your approach and, really kind of make it your own as you move forward. We wanted to be aspirational about it. You all have some capacity challenges with being able to, actually get some of these things done with implementation. So we wanted to make sure that we created the implementation plan, understanding that capacity, and then identifying resources that can be helpful. And then last of all, again, that town plan, making sure that we are avoiding duplication, but that we're also, complementing it with the implementation of what we're suggesting and kind of rolling it all into one so that it's easier for Tammy and, town staff and the EDC to push forward with the recommendations. Next slide. Okay, engagement. I could talk about this for a while, but I'm going to keep it short just in the interest of time. So we did virtual sessions. We did those interviews I spoke about. We interviewed town staff. We interviewed members of the EDC. We interviewed local businesses. We did a focus group with regional and state partners, which was really wonderful and insightful. We did that community-wide survey, had 422 responses, really excellent outreach on the part of Essex, and really great participation there. And it really shows. So when you look at the document within the engagement summary, and then also if you look at the in the appendices where we have more engagement results, you can see more of the responses from the community from the survey, which I think are really interesting to read through. And then we did on-site sessions. So we did a virtual session with businesses, strategic insight sessions to kind of really kind of narrow in on what they want and what they think that needed to happen. And the same with on-site sessions. We did an on-site session with businesses and community leaders, EDC, and town staff. Next slide. Great. Okay, so now we're going to dig into the strategic action plan. Let's get to the meat of what is included. We break these down into 5 what we call focus areas or pillars. So destination development is number 1, entrepreneurship and business retention is number 2, 3 is education and workforce support, 4 is business attraction and expansion, and 5 is leadership and community engagement. All of these things, like I said, from a holistic point of view, pull into what the whole picture is of economic development in Essex. The first one we're going to talk about is destination development. So essentially, this is pushing forward all of those things that we call place-based strategies. So this is tourism. This is the infrastructure for tourism, attracting tourists. So, a lot of that tourism strategy, also placemaking and local culture, aligning planning efforts. So your town center plans, et cetera, and making sure that all of that is integrated. So this is really looking at absolutely like tourism, community vibrancy, all of those things, the amenities that people want when they are living and working in a place. But also from an economic development standpoint, tourism brings in outside spending. Also your small businesses, your retail, your restaurants, your lodging, any kind of attraction or activities, those kinds of things are really both desired by the community and tourists. So you're really kind of working on elevating those types of businesses. It's also very closely aligned with regional, state, and federal efforts, plus the programming and capacity and funding that's available. Next. Second one here is probably what I would consider probably the most important economic development focus area that you're going to look at. And this is your business retention and the advancement of your entrepreneurial ecosystem. So this is looking at what supports your local businesses have, what resources are available to them. Do they even know what's available to them? And this is about consistency. It's really about creating a system in which you can consistently have outreach to your businesses, that you can do this on a kind of a rolling basis, and look for those different ways in which you can expand that economic development ecosystem, working with your partners, whether that's local partners, regional partners, et cetera. Your businesses that we spoke with really seem eager to have a network within Essex to really connect to each other. And I think that there's a big opportunity there, and especially working alongside your regional and state partners, whether that's, Lake Champlain Chamber of Commerce or, all the other potential regional and state organizations that can help you with that. But being proactive with that retention, being proactive with helping businesses problem solve and connecting them with each other and with resources, that's really what this piece of the puzzle is really all about. So fostering that collaboration, leveraging that private investment within the community, and kind of just helping that expand. Next. Okay, so the other thing that businesses need to survive. So if you want to support your businesses, you got to support your workforce. So this is all about the things that your workforce needs. And what we heard repeatedly throughout the community, and it's not unique to Essex, but Essex does have unique pieces within this, is skill development, housing, childcare, healthcare, other kind of critical quality of life needs. So looking at how you collaborate and understand and solve those problems, whether that's, working on, transportation options, right, for different maybe industries that are trying to get transportation for their employees, strengthening those relationships between your businesses and educational partners so that they understand what kinds of resources are available to them and how they can help boost the educational resources that are going to help feed their talent pipeline. And then just boost these businesses that are already supporting these quality of life needs, right? So supporting the businesses in your community that contribute to the healthcare ecosystem within the community, for example. So labor market's really tight in Essex, really kind of fostering that that network there and making sure that economic development can help with those connections and, pushing forward to make sure that the workforce is supported in Essex is really critical. Next slide. All right, this is the fun one. This is what everybody thinks of when they think of economic development, and that's attraction and expansion. So business attraction and expansion to kind of push that economic growth, right? And a lot of times when people think of attraction expansion, they're thinking big industry, big business, trying to pull them into the community. And while that does happen from time to time when you're trying to attract maybe a business that's going to contribute significantly to your tax base, it also has really kind of fundamental impacts at a smaller level. And what I want to kind of get across with this particular strategic focus area is that it's actually very proactive. So what's happened in Essex a lot is that Essex has been very reactive with its attraction efforts. Somebody wants to come in and then we react and figure out what we want to do about it instead of being proactive and knowing what the inventory of sites is, knowing the assets that you have, understanding all of those different pieces, having a really good value proposition with why someone should do business here in Essex, and then going out and trying to find the right fit, the right sized companies to locate in Essex, and the types of businesses that are kind of in line, right, with what the community is looking for too. So you can help manage that growth and offset some of these, sometimes, impacts that we didn't really plan for, right? So you want to make sure that you are proactive and that you're increasing your ability to manage those sites and understand all of your assets that you have. Next. Okay. This is probably my favorite one. So I talked about business retention and expansion being probably the most important. This would probably be my second most important and probably my favorite strategy out of them all. And this is really about expanding your capacity, really looking at your economic development structure and leadership and how you push forward to build that as Essex continues to kind of, come into its own a little bit more when it comes to economic development. And so that means that we want to elevate the impact that the EDC has. We want to have really active involvement with our economic development partners, especially at the regional level, and the resources that they can bring. We want to, keep expanding those relationships, and we want to be proactive in the community and create what I call a community engagement feedback loop, which essentially is just listening to the community, showing them how we're using the feedback that we get from the community, listening to the community, and then giving that, back to them and letting them know how we're using the information that they're giving us. I think that's really critical to building trust within a community. So we mentioned before, Essex is, kind of tight on capacity to do some of these things. So looking at the wide range of economic development tasks that any community can do, no single economic development commission, staff member, etc., is going to be able to do all of those tasks by themselves. So you have to have a network. So looking at the structure of how you conduct your economic development, looking at maybe some more creative ways to try and fund some of those efforts, those tasks that need to be done, and integrating some really good best practices for your leadership and for your staff, right? Professional development, et cetera, and really kind of catalyze all of that action to elevate your impact moving forward. Next. Okay, this is another one of my favorite parts, which is implementation success. Now, I've been on the other end of this, having interviewed and worked with consultants on plans and had to then take that plan and implement it. And it is not an easy task to do. And a lot of times, the cliche as it is, the plan will sit on a shelf, and so you will have shelled out this money to create this plan, and then it sits there and you don't do anything with it. That's not at all what we want to happen with this. That's part of the reason why we integrated so thoughtfully with the town plan. We hope that you enthusiastically adopt the plan, but that you understand that it's a living document. So if there's something in the plan that isn't working for you, say there's a particular strategy that you're like, we considered that, it's not going to work for us here in Essex, we need to pivot away from that. Amend the plan. We don't need this to be a static document. The moment that you pull data, it's out of date, right? Because of a number of factors, right? It's a static moment in time. We want this to be a living document. Don't be afraid to amend it as you go along. We highly recommend a quarterly work plan. I believe Tammy's already worked on this. She showed me a little insight about what she was looking at with it. And part of the quarterly work plan with this allows you to stay agile. It allows you to stay focused on those timelines that you have and moving the pieces forward. We recommend integrating the focus areas and that work plan into meeting agendas for the EDC. And that those, pillars also have updates to the select board. Coordination with the partners. And there are, within the implementation plan, partners called out to work with on specific pieces of the puzzle. And then really, when it comes down to it, the most important thing you can do, or one of the most important things you can do, is to empower and support your staff. So make sure that Tammy has the resources that she needs to do what she needs to do to push forward and to help the EDC push forward. And then, of course, as always, transparency. What does it look like? What's the accountability? We've put down different partners to help with different initiatives within the plan. We have timelines down there. We have key performance indicators to track to show kind of how you're moving toward those desired outcomes. So we hope that it makes it a little bit easier to be transparent, to be accountable, and to help with reporting. And again, if you're going along and you're like, hey, that key performance indicator isn't actually measuring what we wanted to measure to get to this desired outcome, again, it's a living document. Amend it, make it yours, make it work for you as you go along. That's what I have. Any questions?
Awesome. Thank you so much. Is there any questions from the board about the presentation or the final plan? Kendall.
I was struck by the note in there that you said that Essex is about 75% residential currently, and that a lot of the property tax revenue and everything comes from the working families. And then you said that it's important to build housing for those same families. My question is in your experience with doing this for, I assume, a great number of communities, do you have a recommendation for what would be a very good mix between residential and business? Is it 60-40, 50-50? It just, that's what I'm really curious about.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I don't know that I have a specific mix. I think every community is different in their character and their makeup. And so I would never want to, dictate that to anybody or make a suggestion. I think that it's always going to be helpful to have a good mix. And anytime that you can, you really have to balance it with what your community wants, right? So if your community is okay with handling more of the tax burden on the residents, then I think it's okay to have that heavier on the residential side. Whereas if you are, like we were hearing a lot from residents and even business owners, like that residents were really struggling with the taxes within the community. So if you're able to offset that with more business investment, then that just kind of gives that trade-off a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. Sorry for giving you a non-answer for your question.
Just a comment. I appreciate it. I think you've done a lot of work here, and so it was a lot to read through. But I think that there are some good recommendations, and your presentation was great. So thank you.
Thank you, Meg. I appreciate that. Yeah, a lot of work did go into this, a lot of hours. And it is a very long document, but we did take time to hopefully organize it in a way that was easy to find what you're looking for.
Yeah, I want to echo some of what Meg just said, that yeah, there's a lot of work here. Thank you for doing it. Highlights a lot of things that we should or could be working on, could or should be working on. And I know when we're moving into I guess we have a discussion later about how to handle our strategic planning. And as you said, we don't want nice plans that we pay for to just sit on the shelf. So hopefully we'll be incorporating many of the actions highlighted here as we move forward.
Yeah, I hope so. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the board, or I'll ask the EDC members to come up and speak? Oh, Shannon.
I just wanted to echo what Andy said. I think this is excellent. I want to thank the Lindsay there and everyone that was involved. I also want to thank the community members and the EDC. This is great and a great resource we can use moving forward.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon.
Thank you.
I invite our EDC members to come up and speak if there's any will. If not, that's okay.
I don't have anything extra to add. Thank you all. Tammy, too. Everyone.
My consensus is the EDC is very happy with the plan.
We had input.
Good.
And a lot of the suggestions we made were incorporated.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. And I'll turn to the public for any comments. Anybody online? Lois?
You alluded very, very briefly to transportation. And since, as a member of the public, I have not read the report, I wondered if you would speak a little bit to the importance of public transportation, which is at a critical juncture at this point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So Green Mountain Transit, I believe, is the organization has reduced some of their lines. I think that there's a lot of work to be done, and I know that there's some industry leaders in the area who have been struggling with getting workforce to and from. So especially with limited housing availability, if you look at the housing market within Essex, you're pretty full, right? Like the housing that you have is pretty full up. So any workers trying to come in and live in Essex is very, very difficult to be able to find anywhere that they could live, even if they can afford it. And so there's a lot of transportation issues back and forth for those commuting in and out of the area. So there are currently some efforts to try to work with, especially those industry partners, to come up with some, solutions around that. I can't speak to the specific, status of those efforts right at the moment, just because I've kind of been a little out of the loop, at least for the last, month or so. So you might ask Tammy or others to give an update on any, if there have been any advancements on that. But public transportation, especially with the lack of housing and with the workforce demands within Essex, is really, really very important piece of the puzzle.
Just stating your full name for the record, please.
Lois Whitmore.
Is there any other public comment?
If I can add one thing really quickly, Lois, in addition to the public transit for workforce being important, it's also really important that there are walkable, bikeable areas and connection to get to the different places within Essex. So that's going to help both workers and residents to be able to get back and forth where they need to go. And that's also included within the plan, especially in the destination development focus area.
Just a further question. How much of your plan depends on there being public transportation in terms of implementation?
So implementation doesn't necessarily depend on public transportation. Our public transportation infrastructure improvements are more of an outcome of what we're hoping to help improve through the efforts that are within implementation. So, there's a limited amount of things that can be impacted directly from town staff or by the EDC. So we take what we can control and we try and work within that framework.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Not seeing anybody online, not seeing anybody in the room. I'll bring it back to the board and I'd look for a motion. Unless there's any other questions.
I'll make the motion that the select board adopt the economic development strategic plan as presented.
Okay, motion's made by Andy, seconded by Shannon. Sorry, motion by Andy, seconded by Shannon. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against, say no. Passes 5-0. Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We're here if you guys need implementation support moving forward. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Okay, and that brings us to our next business item, 6D. Presentation and discussion about proposed municipal wastewater allocation ordinance 1018 of the town ordinances, the update.
It's a mouthful. So, back again. You've seen this a couple times already, mostly in the reading file. Issued before the board tonight is the proposed sewer allocation study and proposed ordinance changes. Provide any recommendations for change in the ordinance of what we have presented here tonight in the packet, and move to proceed with adoption of the ordinance following presentation of the revised sewer and water use ordinances, which will likely follow after we have direction here tonight. Brought Dennis here with me tonight. He's been spearheading this effort to get this completed. He was one of the original authors of our current sewer allocation ordinance back in 2010 when it was last revised. Since then, we've had a few updates with our zoning, 2017, and most recently October of 23. In addition to the changes in the zoning throughout town, the town plan was just updated back in March of 2024. Being 16 years since the last update of the sewer allocation, we found that there was a couple disconnects between this document, our ordinances, and some of the new zoning regulations, particularly the zoning map and our sewer core map. Dennis had tried to alleviate some of these by adjusting where we proposed the boundary to be. You'll see that later on in some of his presentation. One of the biggest changes thus far with our proposed allocation ordinance change is the estimated usage of a single-family home in the town of Essex. Currently, the ordinance has it down as 200 gallons per day. Our recommendation for a single-family dwelling would be 150 gallons per day. Dennis did a fairly lengthy study utilizing close to almost 50 years of data, water use data here in the town of Essex, which confirms this number. And he did look into national studies of that and made comparisons, and pretty much they're all in agreement. This change, if approved by the select board as proposed, will also impact our water and sewer ordinances. We chose starting off with the sewer allocation ordinance first, being that there was the most significant changes involved, labor-intensive part of this. And these changes are going to facilitate smaller changes within the water and sewer use ordinances, which are going to come to the board after. Once all three ordinances have been reviewed by the select board and the changes approved, it is recommended that we move forward with the formal ordinance adoption process for all three ordinances and kind of keep them in sync with each other and approved with each other, so there's no gap in coverage, if you will, of these ordinances, so they don't conflict with each other. In your packet tonight, you see Dennis has provided us with a list of all the specific changes that we have proposed for you within the sewer use or the sewer allocation ordinance. And we can address any questions, comments you may have, or particular changes you think we should see in our ordinance. I think we could probably start by looking at the red line copy, Dennis, of the sewer use.
I didn't know if you wanted to go back and talk about the map.
We could, if we could pull that up, Karen. Mm-hmm. You want to start with the existing?
Yeah,
sewer core map.
Start with that because it's easy to explain. Also, I hate to correct Aaron, but actually it goes back to 1984. Because that's when we actually adopted the sewer allocation ordinance and were required to do so by the federal government. Is a condition of the grant for the wastewater treatment system. Williston also had the same condition. The intent was the federal government was going to give us a substantial amount of money to build a new sewer system, but wanted to make sure that the growth was controlled. And so they basically said, as a condition of the grant, do a sewer allocation ordinance. So the first one went back to 1984, and unfortunately I wrote that one as well. So I've had a long history with this and seen it through to where we are now. I think I want to use two maps, but I'll start with the existing map. As Aaron said, zoning has progressed, and the intent in 1984 was the same as it is today, and that is the zoning really determines where sewers go. And once you decide what the zoning is going to be, those zones have either allow for sewer or don't allow for sewer. Easiest example would be a conservation district. You're not going to put sewer in a conservation district. But when you go through all the various areas, the intent would be that the boundary would follow the limit of the zone or zones which allow sewers. This is the 2010 map, and there's a couple errors when you look at it for today, some of which were committed back then, unfortunately, but some have occurred because of the new change in zoning. And one of them is, and you'll see in the next map, and I'm just going to, I don't know if you'd see if I go up and point to it or not, but I'll just indicate where it is. The left-hand side of the map is Susie Wilson Road area, Susie Wilson Road bypass, and then you head out towards Colchester. Under the new town zoning, there's a portion of the town which is left of 2A, am I right?
Mm-hmm.
2A, north of the bypass that's now zoned for sewer. And maybe I should have stated this at the beginning, but you can't have two policy documents of the town that are in contradiction to each other. You can't have a zoning document that says you're allowed sewer in this district and then have a sewer allocation ordinance that's adopted also by the board that says you can't have it because the map doesn't show it. So they've got to be in sync. So this is an attempt from the map point of view to make that in sync. There also was a change. I'm not sure why it was made. It's unfortunate it was made, I think, but it is what it is. There's an area over on the right-hand side of the map in yellow, bright yellow on the old map, that's in the sewer core. It's that northern portion, the most northern yellow portion, let's put it that way, right there. That was in the sewer core in 2010. It also includes the elementary school, which has sewer. It includes Thomas Lane and some other roads, which have sewer. However, now, in the current zoning, that zone is no longer allowed to have sewer. So we've got to fix a way around that. In addition, back then the boundaries were written to generally concur with zoning, but not exact zoning boundaries. So with the new map, we wanted to fix that as well. So if you could be so kind as to switch to the new map, it'll explain it maybe a little bit better. Okay. It's a little hard to see, but the dark line boundary around the town, both what I would call the eastern portion and the western portion, is now the proposed limit of sewer allocation. So if you look on the far left, that bright blue area to the north, aquamarine area, if you will, is now in the sewer core. So that means if a party came in under zoning and said, we want to put a development out there, or an industrial building, or a commercial building, or whatever else that fits the zoning, it could go there because that's what zoning says. So the allocation map has to show that. So there's a boundary there in the blue, and there's a yellow portion which I think is medium density industrial, which heads up to the left there. And the brown area is outside of the sewer core. The yellow areas north of the boundary to the right are also outside the sewer core. So we have that dilemma where the sewer core, because of zoning, does not include that parcel up by the elementary school. So, in fact, the way the map is drawn as a draft right now is probably incorrect, because that line, I don't know if you can show it with an arrow, but that line there, that section needs to be out of the sewer allocation area because it's out of zoning. And the rest of the boundaries, you'll notice, are jagged, because that is what the zoning boundary is. It's not a straight line. I don't know if anyone has questions on the discrepancy of the map, but if they do, maybe if anyone on the board wants to ask the question on the map, it might be a good time to do it now as we move on. I know some of the board members have seen this before, but I wanted to go over it again to refresh everybody's memory.
Kendall?
Do you expect that there will not be any conflict between the zoning and allocation in the future up where the elementary school is?
I certainly hope so. I would hope that at some point in time that because there is sewer there, that possibly the zoning could be changed to do that, but that's a planning issue. That's not a public works issue. It was probably an error on our part, and I was part of the organization at that point in time, that we didn't catch that before that zoning change got made, but it didn't get caught. The zoning change was made, and we have to deal with it now. So in the ordinance, I have written up a section that we can talk about later when we get into the ordinance that at least would rectify that to a degree, and the board would have an input into additional sewer that might go into that area for people who are already on sewer. At least to provide a short-term solution until at some future date, possibly the zoning can be corrected. That's my input. Everybody may not agree with me, but that's how I feel it ought to be done.
Okay, so if we go with your recommendation like this, we still have the option to correct it in the future, per se. Great, thank you.
And I think it's really important. We've kind of written into this ordinance almost a requirement for Public Works to update the sewer allocation map when the zoning map changes. And I don't think that was in the last one, but we've actually put that in to force the Public Works Department, of which I was a part, to make sure that that happens, that we don't have any more disconnects in the future.
Any other questions from the board? I got a quick question about the key for the future allocations. Can you just speak a little bit about the future allocations matching with the zones, and then how you're going to determine breaking up the allocation inside of the zones, just for everybody to know?
Yeah. Let me answer that in a minute, if I can.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay?
Yeah.
I want to get to
Sounds
that one,
good.
because that's an important question. I think the other issue that we've talked about, at least through maybe the last year, is the issue of flow. And that documentation exists in the record, and everybody can look it up there in terms of how I determined what the flow should be. But I go back to 1984, because in 84, I ran the numbers on the original sewer system against existing water usage. And I was the one that came up with the number 200, because that's what the average was at that point in time. So doing this time around, I wanted to follow the same procedure. That's why we went through, and I was very careful when I looked at the water data, and there was I think there were 5 periods now, it's been a long time, of recorded sewer flow, whatever, what they're billed against. And I had to look at it very carefully. I excluded those users those properties who were not on municipal sewer. The assumption being, and there are some properties in town that are on town water and not sewer. I didn't want to have any property, because a person who maybe is on a well, I think would use their water much differently than a person who's getting municipal water and municipal sewer. So I didn't want to mess that up. Each piece of data for each individual property, I looked at very carefully, because I knew that on certain streets it was all single-family residential. Other streets it was all condos. Other streets it was multifamily apartments. So I looked at those very carefully, and in some cases, I had to throw out the data, because there may have been 4 good periods of data reporting and one maybe at 0. Maybe the house sold. Maybe they went to Florida for 6 months. I don't know, but I was not going to use corrupted data. So it took a long time to go through all that data to get a database that in fact was accurate. And I came up with, and I just want to, just so you have the numbers, and like I said, we've been over this before, 405 single-family units, 413 one-story condominiums, and 501 multi-story apartments condominiums. So it was a large database and took probably almost 4 months to pick through all that data and come up with the numbers on a spreadsheet. So I feel comfortable that number is correct. I then checked that, as we said, as Aaron said, against other sources. What's happening in New England? I have contacts there. What's happening in other communities? What the national numbers say. And we recognize that there's a reduction in flow, especially in New England, on average daily use. It was pretty clear universally from talking to the water sewer director in the city of Boston, to the New Hampshire water director for the state. They're all saying the same thing. And Aaron and I were at one point both on the Champlain Water District. And if you know all the construction that's going on in Chittenden County, their flow numbers have not gone up substantially. They've remained almost constant, if not dropped.
Almost constant.
Why? And the reasons are, and there's a bunch of reasons why, but people are using less water. Families are smaller, it may be economic. And so I'm confident that the numbers we picked are accurate. And the 150, actually, if you ask me the number, the exact number, it would be 135. But we picked 150 because we wanted to make sure that there's a margin of error in whatever you do. So we wanted to account for that margin of error. That's why it's 150 and not 135. Going back to your question, what we did with this is, under the old map, if you can go back to the old map, if you would please. There are areas within that map that the way the ordinance was set up, there was no capacity set aside for them. Some of the areas, if you look at it, you can look at the better part of Forestdale. Maybe you can use your pointer again. But this area up here, this area down here, areas over here, where there was no capacity provided. They're in the sewer core, but we knew that if everybody in the sewer core were to build sewers, it's more than the capacity that we have. But the truth of the matter is, and Aaron ran some numbers today, we're curious because what does it cost to build sewer? And it's up to the resident to construct that. The town is not paying for sewer. We couldn't afford it.
No.
The town can't afford it. But for a 100-foot section, based upon estimates that we've got from other projects, it's about
It's like $275 to $300
a foot.
per linear foot of gravity main line.
That's $30,000 a lot. Not a lot of people. You're the fourth house in a development, and you need sewer. You've got to convince the other 3 people that you want to spend $120,000, because that's what it's going to cost you to get sewer to your property. Is that likely to happen? It will in some cases.
Mm-hmm. But what we found, especially like down in the lower end, Painesville area, in Pinecrest, is it's almost at par with each other. The cost associated with a gravity sewer project and the cost to put in a mound system are roughly at par in those areas. So when a neighbor goes ahead, and we sometimes we get a call, at least 1 or 2 a year, saying, hey, what's the cost to connect? And then we tell them the process in which they got to go through and potential cost of a gravity sewer connection or a project like that. They usually opt to put in the mound system on site. So in the past, we if you, real briefly, there's a process we have, and we went through this on Wildwood. Residents got together. They decided they all wanted to get connected to sewer. The process was we would design the project, we would bond for the project, we would construct the project, but all the residents within that corridor on Wildwood that were connected would pay in their bills their portion of the bond payment over 20 years back. So it was like a net zero cost to the ratepayers within the town of Essex.
And that option is still out there.
Yes.
So there is a way to go about doing it. To answer your question.
Hold on one second. I'm going to pause it because there's two members of the board that like to ask some more questions. But I got.
But I want to answer
okay, the EU.
Can I answer
okay.
your question real specifically? Because it's quick. I went through this map and took a look at, back then we used the EU, or currently we're using EUs. So each one of those single-family properties was 200 gallons a day. I went through and added up for each zone what that amounted to in terms of flow. So when you go to the new map, plus who's our, any of the empty lots where there's some capacity where it may be more than 200 gallons a day because they've got a larger parcel. Maybe it was 3.
Right.
I added those all up. But now, if we use 150 gallons per day, how does that 150 gallon a day within that zone compare to the old number within that zone? If we were to include everybody, so everybody now in a zone has the capacity to have sewer. That's what we're going to say. That's what is going to say in the ordinance. First come, first serve, you have capacity. The board will have a reserve in case the capacity for that zone is used up. So the board will control a reserve to allow, you won't get as many requests for additional capacity because it's now zoned. And in all cases, the flow for those zones under the new ordinance are more than they were previously, with the exception of the Painesville area. And one of the reasons why is it's not, we've tried twice. The town's tried twice. I say we because I'm still a temporary employee, so I consider myself part of the town.
You are.
But the town's tried twice to put sewers in there, trying to do all kinds of incentives, covering the cost of the paving of the road, doing, not requiring the connection fee. It went nowhere. We had petitions wanting to do it. Once the costs came out, the answers came back no. And not just by a small margin. They just said, no, we're not going to do it. We can't afford it. So that, and what's happened in addition is the town plan now calls for growth in the town center. So you've got to gravitate more of the growth to the town center. And I use the town plan with numbers for that area to make sure it stayed within what the town wants to do in the future for the town center and along Route 15. Areas down along 117 used to have a fairly high allocation of capacity. It's now power panels. It's in a site with
solar panel.
Solar panels on it. They're not going to put sewer on solar panel sites. So it was a question of adjusting. And I was looking for those numbers today, and I'll be darned I can't find it, but I know I did it, and I know it's there. I'll have to dig it out. But I've got the actual numbers comparing what was in that new zone, if you will, previously, with what is now going to be proposed for that zone. And in each case, the proposed numbers are equal to or larger than what's in that zone before. And we've included everybody in that zone. So nobody's excluded. Anybody within the boundary now can request sewer.
And the select board retains the ability to
Right.
Have their own little purse of allocation to distribute anywhere within the core.
Right. So the short is there's a flow number for each zone, and inside of that flow number, there's also a built-in reserve on top.
Yes.
Awesome. Kendall, I saw your hand was up for a while. Go ahead.
Okay, my question was, a lot of places now are using a different allocation number for water versus wastewater. unless I miss it, we're using this one number for both, right?
To fund the sewer costs to run the system. And we're not, I think the allocation ought to be one number, but let's jump to rates. If you've got a certain cost to run your sewer system, say it's $2 million, that's a fixed cost. If you divide that by 1, it's different than dividing that by 0.8. They're going to pay the same dollar value, but they're going to have a higher rate. Dividing by 1 and dividing by 0.8 are two different numbers. And you've got to divide flow into cost to get rate. So why you would go to 80% just to make people feel better that, hey, I'm not using all that water and some of it I'm using it for it doesn't matter. You're going to pay the same dollar value. So why go through the exercise of doing an 80% versus 100% if you're going to pay the same rate cost? It doesn't make any difference.
Excellent. I like that answer. I will go one step further and ask another question. The other thing that a lot of communities are doing they're incorporating a loading charge with their allocation and stuff, because we know that 1,000 gallons from a resident isn't the same as 1,000 gallons from a brewery. Will that come later when you look at the rates, or is this something that should be talked about in the allocation, because it is mentioned very briefly in there?
Kendall, I think that's something that we've raised and discussed at the Tri-Town level as well. So we're all on the same page, and that's, well, likely, in my opinion, and my recommendation would be that's where we want to realize that difference and those costs, and have both all three communities, the Junction, Williston, and the town, all on the same page, so we can bring that number back to our communities and adopt it into whatever fee mechanism we have. And I think that's something we could probably do when we adopt rates every year as well, is have that additional fee.
And to be honest, Kendall, this is a complicated subject, and like I say, everything you change in the allocations for new users, not existing users, but a lot of this stuff floats over into the other ordinances. And the way I've written up the other ordinances is that there's a strength factor in there, and if they are above the strength factor, they're required to either correct it or pay a surcharge for that extra strength. Mm-hmm. So it's built right now as proposed, which you haven't seen yet. It's built into that rate structure to make that correction for overstrength waste. And that'll come into big play for breweries and things like that come on, where the expectation is either pay a large sum for that or pre-treat it on site to get it back down to the normal 300 milligrams per liter of BOD and suspended solids. So we actually put a number in there, and it's based on the work that Aaron did previously to try to set up that rate structure. So it's in the sewer ordinance, not the sewer allocation ordinance. So you'll see that when you get that.
Okay, perfect. Because I just think with what's happening is that we're apt to use up the biological capacity of the treatment plant way before we use the flow capacity. So thank you.
Meg, did you still have a question?
No, I think in the description he answered my question, so I appreciate it.
Andy, Shannon?
No question.
Thank you. Continue. Unless you're good.
Kendall's good.
Kendall.
Sorry, I almost forgot my question now. Repeats. I hate when that happens. Excuse me. I'll come back to you later. Thank you.
We'll be right here.
All 5 of us.
Do you want to go into this? In a very
just briefly.
Yeah, in a very general sense. Yeah. I'm not going to read this because it's in your work, but I think the significant change what you've got in front of you is a clean copy of the proposed ordinance a copy with the red line changes.
Yeah.
I will admit, if you go one or the other, you may find a few changes, because after doing all the red line work, line by line, indicating what the changes were, I read through the final copy and realized there were some typos. There's some other things in there. So the final copy hopefully is a lot cleaner than the draft copy, but there's the line by line explanation, so you can look at that. And then there's the final one. But in a general sense, and there's maybe a half a dozen important things, but the one is flow, switching to the 150 gallons a day, and all the other uses. I looked not just at single-family houses, but I looked at commercial places, bars, restaurants, schools. Tried to think of all the uses that might come into Essex or are in Essex, and eliminate some of those that probably aren't likely to come in. And if you ask me what they are, I couldn't tell you because I don't remember. But I looked at that. The switch from EUs to flow. So instead of using EUs now, it'll be based on flow. There's a current dilemma on the way we administer the process. A development comes in, it gets its approval. Once it's got its approval now, what the town does, it sends a letter to the state saying, you have water and wastewater allocation, and the developer uses this to continue with his project. Truth of the matter is, our allocation ordinance says we don't give that letter out until it's paid for. But it's only paid for on a lot-by-lot basis. So what's proposed on the rate structure is the developer comes in, he's got a six-lot subdivision. He would pay that allocation before he started construction. And we've got some ways that we can kind of help out with that cost by, if it goes over a certain amount, they could pay it over time. But the bottom line is, they pay that at that point in time, and they pay a separate connection fee as each house or each building connects onto the system. So that they're two separate fees. Right now, it's a water or sewer initiation fee. They're both lumped together. In the ordinance, we've separated them out. So it's real clear. You get your, and this is the way, I know this is the way South Burlington does it. I know there are other communities too. You get your allocation. The price of the allocation is the fee you pay to the town. We send a letter to the state saying it's good to go, and the connection fee gets paid as they go along, because that's what it is. It's a fee to actually connect to the main sewer. That's a substantive change. I think it's an important change, but it is different than what's being done now.
Mm-hmm. And it's spread up. It's going to be, that's what facilitated the change, not in the other ordinances as well. So that's going to be a change in the sewer use ordinance.
Dennis, can I stop you for 1 second?
Yep.
Meg's got a question for you. Go ahead, Meg.
Yep. And that okay. That change, just so I understand, you're providing the allocation for the entire proposed development, and then there's like a time limit on it, correct? So the town can reclaim it if they don't, if they say they have a 6-lot that's approved, but they only build 4 of them, the town can reclaim that allocation, correct, after a certain period of time. Okay, thank you.
Yep. We did check. We can talk about this later, or we can, and if it comes to another meeting, which it probably will, but under the fees, Aaron's doing a separate rate study to take a look at rates, which are different than fees. And in that rate study, it was interesting that the fees, Essex fees compared to other communities' fees, and I think there were 6 communities, were the second lowest.
For connection fees.
For connection fees, all right? And so when I looked at the numbers to try to come up with an appropriate connection fee, I tried to make, I shouldn't say, connection is based on the cost to actually do the connection, the town cost to review plans, the town cost to inspect, the town cost to provide a meter, all those things. The allocation fee is based on, I'm a customer. I hooked on to the sewer in 1985. Since 1985 to now, I've been paying a cost every year to provide capacity for you today to connect onto the sewer. The allocation fee is based on recouping some of those costs. So it's fair. You want to come in late in the process, which it is, there should be a payment back for those people who connected on from day one. Now, you get into numbers. You can include a whole lot of numbers in that, or you can restrict those numbers. I tried to restrict the numbers that you're pulling out of past costs so the fees would be comparable to what they are today. So we didn't end up with a fee structure that was not the second lowest in the 6 or 7 Chittenden County communities, but it would be the absolute highest. If you took every single cost that was put into the sewer or water system since they were first built, and some I don't even know if you could find today, you would have an extremely high connection fee. So there's got to be a balance. What past costs do you include? And that's in the documentation under fees. You can read the choices that I suggested to give it a fee. And that fee would change could change almost every year, because it's based on how much reserve capacity is left
remaining
and what that cost is. Because if you've got more debt being paid for a pump station upgrade, maybe another 20,000, that cost goes up. If you've got less capacity, your connection fee will go up over time, but it'll track with real costs. In the past, there was nothing in the ordinance that told anybody how to calculate that fee, even though it was done that way. Now the ordinance says, not telling you what numbers to use, but how you should do it. So it sets a stage for future boards to be able to do this and future public works departments.
Yeah, and it gives us the roadmap moving forward. And just to kind of expand on what Dennis has said, we're going to, over the next 5 years, we're going to see a significant uptick in the amount of bonding, the bond payments that the town of Essex is going to be responsible for the city of Essex Junction to upgrade portions of both its collection system and at the treatment plant as well. So that's going to have a significant impact on what people connecting in the future may be paying for.
Kendall's got his hand up. Go ahead, Kendall.
Yeah, that was my big question. To follow up on what Meg said, it looks like you have built in there that if somebody doesn't use their allocation that they pay for within 3 years, that reverts back to the town automatically and there is no refund, correct? Okay, the second part of my question is, you answered it perfectly in that allocation fees should not be stagnant and stay as long as this one has stayed in Essex. So I'm very happy to hear that you've built in a program, hopefully, where you can update these on a fairly regular basis.
Yeah, the intent would be yearly.
Perfect. That would be awesome. Thank you.
A couple other quick things, and I don't want to take up all evening, but proposed in there minor allocations. Up to now, the boards have been involved with a lot of small applications. I picked a number of 450 gallons a day, which would be like a 3-lot subdivision that would be handled through the manager's office and bypass the board. So that all those the small ones don't have to come. The additional grandmother's house that gets put on the apartment that puts on the back. The board doesn't need to see that stuff. I don't think.
Yeah, to add to that, also the practice of the select board has always been with sewer allocation is to take staff input on those. So a lot of times it's put in the consent agenda as long as staff recommended that it happen.
Yeah.
So I think this just brings a little clarity to the fact that staff is still in control recommending, and then this would be for any larger projects that may be.
And it's definitely
unique.
scale. Any type of larger project or subdivision, we would be bringing any requests to the select board if they were to be using their pot of allocation that they have discretion over distributing. So.
One of the other things I put in, which may be controversial, I don't know, but again, it's up to the board to decide if they want these things in or not, but during the first period of time, maybe the first 6 months, the intent would be for us to contact industrial and commercial users to find out if they haven't used up existing capacity. And for example, you have a shopping center and all of a sudden you've gone from 3 restaurants to 1 and one's been converted to a dry goods shop. They may have capacity that's unused under the old ordinance. Should they be allowed to carry some of that over? And the way to do that is to look at their last 3 years' flow, compare it to what their purchased allocation is, and if they do that, convert some of that to the new system so that it's not a wasted expense for those users. It's a little bit different because in the single-family case, we're basically saying a deal's a deal. The deal was you wanted water and sewer, we gave it to you, you gave us a check, we're done. Because water and sewer can go up or down for houses a lot, depending upon an elderly couple moves out and a family with 4 kids moves in. Totally different situation. You may not like that. I thought that was a way to maybe help with some of the larger users who may have that situation. Again, allocation fees in excess of 20,000. I proposed
Hold on one second.
3-year
Dennis.
period.
Kendall's got a question for you about your last point. Go ahead, Kendall.
In regards to a single family house, will they have enough allocation where if they want to add an accessory apartment, kind of a charge would they be looking at? Just curious.
It's in the fee part. I'd have to dig it out, Kendall. We can do that, but I don't know off the top of my head. It's a relatively smaller fee because
I think it's very similar to the estimated flow we have currently for an ADU, and they basically pay the charge, the allocation charge, not necessarily the connection fee because it's an existing connection. Kendall. So it's going to be very similar to how we do it currently.
I can get an answer. I just don't have one off the top of my head.
We will definitely get you an answer for tomorrow.
I only mention that because if we're going to do that for the big supermarkets and stuff like that, there should be some kind of provision to allow a little bit for certain residents in that case. That's all. Thank you.
It's a good thought, Kendall. I think it's something we may be able to look into a little bit more and get back.
3 more quick things. One of the things that's written in, the town has its sewer in the town of Colchester in 40th and Allen. For those, most of you already know, but the sewer in the water system was deeded to the town in the late 1960s, early 70s. And in the federal government's intense wisdom, they messed it up. The water, the road and the storm sewer are based upon the boundary between in Essex, it's Essex Water, it's Essex Highway and Stormwater. In Colchester, it's Colchester Highway and Stormwater. But they decided to give the town and water system to us. So Colchester residents have always been users of the town system. And in fact, when the town system first got built, about 100,000 gallons of flow, 90,000 came from the fort, and none came from the town. And it took about 5 or 6 or 7 years until the town grows to catch up. So initially, Colchester was essentially supporting the cost, Karen, I have to say that. They're supporting the cost of the town sewer. Now they're about 20% or less.
Less, yeah.
But they're still part of the town system. And one of the things that we've always had a problem with is providing allocation to Colchester, because it's not written into our allocation ordinance. So in this allocation ordinance, we've written up some allocation for the town of Colchester with the expectation that they would manage it using our numbers. The town attorney pointed this out and reviewed it, and it's true. To do that, we probably need an intermissible agreement between the town of Colchester and the town of Essex, so there's a clear understanding.
Which is going to be another document that we're going to have to work on, facilitate after these changes.
There's never been a problem with those users in terms of paying fees, having to take liens against property, shutting off. There's never been a problem. But we need to correct it because there are empty buildings in Colchester that want sewer capacity, and there ought to be an orderly process for them to do that. So that's also built in here.
And to date, we've seen development and redevelopment of some of the dormitories from St. Michael's. But all of them have been under the total category of use, the allocation required of that building. So they actually still have more associated with that particular building than they're actually using.
And with that,
1 second, Dennis.
I'll be quiet.
Okay, cool. Kendall.
I was just going to say that I believe for Colchester, they have an intermunicipal agreement with South Burlington for the wastewater, so you might be able to have a template or something there. Just thought I'd mention. I'm sure you're aware of that. Thank you.
Thanks.
You had one more point. Did you forget it?
Yeah, no, there's, the one I didn't want to repeat myself, but the area about that one part in zoning, and it's in 10.18.080B with a remedy for how we handle the place where the elementary school is.
Yeah.
That property. And then the last thing was, from there you go to the line-by-line changes and the final document, and
Which all of you have had to review here.
Couple weeks.
For a couple weeks.
Yeah.
And
Some of you have seen it before,
Yeah.
some of these changes.
so you can see the whole package. The plan was bring this up to you, get input back either tonight or later on, come back to you with the other two ordinances so you can see the complete picture of everything, and then go, if everything's acceptable to the select board, and go from there to the formal adoption
Start the
process.
process.
So that essentially all three would come into play at the same date, as opposed to one coming early and then you've got a disconnect between numbers that you're using.
Oh, these are definitely going to have to be approved at the same time, so there isn't that disconnect. We don't want to have.
So would you like a preliminary approval tonight? A formal vote, or your consensus is okay?
The recommendation here is basically we're looking for a green light that you've accepted these changes that we're looking at. I know Kendall had another thought there as well. Maybe we can come back with that change and provide more input there. But we'd at least want to know we're on the right track in general. What we've presented here, what we have here going forward is the general direction of where the select board wants to go.
It takes a substantial amount of effort and time if we're going in the wrong direction. If the board says, we really want this change to this, then we've got to change the other two ordinances to reflect that. And we're just trying to do it in a way that allows you to make whatever
Meaningful.
suggestions you want.
Yeah.
We have time to look at those and come back and say, yeah, they're good, or we ought to make some other changes. So my thought process was the kind of, yeah, it looks okay, but maybe take the time to read through it more and the final ordinance and see, is that exactly what you want as far as wording goes, or do you want to change it?
Okay.
So we did, excuse me, we did not warn it for action tonight, so I think just looking for general consensus from the board of, are they going in the right direction, or is there any changes that you'd like to see?
I look to the board for any direct questions on the information presented tonight, and then if there's nothing, I'd go to the public. I see Andy's hand. Go ahead, Andy.
I'm just going to say I'm in support of what's recommended here or what's proposed. So I got my thumbs up.
Kendall?
Yeah, I would just say this represents a humongous amount of work. Great job, guys. Everything is great. I did have a couple comments, but yeah, get a thumbs up for me too. Thank you.
Meg?
Yep, I'll echo what Andy and Kendall said. I appreciate the amount of work, and it's clearly been really thought through, and so yeah, it's good for me as well.
Shannon?
I think this is great discussion, and it's obviously a lot of work's gone into this, so I think we're doing the right thing.
Thank you. And now I look to the public for any public comment. Come on up. Please state your name for the record. Over here. He'll move for you. He'll slide over for you.
Here,
Sorry.
go ahead.
I mean to displace you. Hi, Cheryl Van Epps, and I was negligent. I didn't read your report on sorry for that. But I do have two questions. Well, one comment and one question. And the comment was on Wildwood Drive. I'm a resident of Pinewood Manor, and I did a little research in the A&R files that were archived. It appeared that there had been a number of septic system failures on Wildwood that placed them in a position where they needed to be put onto sewer system. So I just wanted to give that as a rationale for why those residents wanted to go with sewer. It was like no other alternative. Apparently their soils and the steep slopes caused the failures. And that leads me to my question. I realize that times are changing and the seasons and the weather patterns are changing. I know we're going to look at hotter temperatures, so I'm wondering where is that going to take us with the systems, both water and effluent, yard watering, swimming pools, showering more. I don't know what all will go into it, but have you considered those changes in our usage patterns? And that's it. I'll go read your report now. Thank you.
We basically we don't really estimate into the sewer any type of use outside for any municipal water. I don't know if Dennis wants to speak to any additional usage for a home, single family home based off of climate change.
Yeah, the only thing I can point to is what we're seeing in New England, and the stuff that we're looking at isn't old data. The stuff we looked at is relatively new, and I took the data after COVID, so it's all post-COVID. So that was at least one issue that I had a concern about, because people obviously weren't going to work; they're staying at home, and I didn't want to have that. I wanted to go back to what we might call some level of normality. As far as the climate goes, it can change. In the ordinance, I proposed that the board can change the numbers without, I'm almost sure that's in there, I'll go back and check, without changing the whole ordinance.
To recalculate the
to recalculate, because it is an unknown going into the future. It's a bit of a crapshoot because you really don't know what impact everything's going to happen. Our sewer system is fairly tight. We don't have a very big loss rate, and that means there's not a lot of infiltration getting in. So if you get more rain, it's really not an issue. I was surprised when I looked at the data, and it was one of the summer billing periods where, and I did look at weather data, it was very dry, but it didn't really change the water use dramatically in the sense of people will water the gardens and do things like that and water the grass, but it resulted in about the same water use over the full year, because you're dealing with a full year's worth of time, not just a day during the summer where you get an intense rainstorm. Can it change in the future? Yes, it can. We don't know. So I think that ought to be in the ordinance that allows the board and the department to look at numbers again. It's one of those things that probably when you redo every year when you go in, you wouldn't do it every year because it's too much data to do. But maybe some of the changes in terms of the town system, just in terms of how the records are kept for the water department, they're all electronic, but they're in order of the original books. Because there used to be books that you took around to each water meter to measure what the water was. No one takes those readings anymore. Now they're all done on a drive-by with a computer. So it's order to rearrange that data so that you could go through and categorize single-family house, condominium, duplex, to essentially quickly collect that data to have a recheck. And I'm not saying every year, but maybe every 2 or 3 years, you might be able to do that quickly. Because it's a simple Excel spreadsheet numbers, averages, number of houses, come up with a number. And I think as we go forward, that automation might allow you to do that, and you'll know, hey, we're doing pretty good. It's a good number. Or whoops, should be 160, should be 170. Who knows?
Awesome. Thank you. Come on up. Please state your name for the record when you get here, even though I know you.
Hi. My name is Ann Miller. I'm a resident of 60 Sydney Drive. We are on the water and sewer core. We use it more than we should. I had a question. I really appreciated the work that you presented because I'm somebody who works a lot with data, and it's nice to work at the really granular level that you have. My question is really around, the one thought that came to mind to me is that we know we've adopted more water saving technology, right? Lower flow, lower the toilets, the shower, and things like that. So that definitely would account for some of the reduction that we're seeing. And we also have a population over the last 20 years or longer that has continued to get older, and it's well documented that older people use less water than younger people, and my children are good examples of that. So my question is really thinking about the future, because we're talking about like building, bringing in younger families, building for younger families, and different kinds of maybe building, like smaller houses. And I just wonder whether or not you've considered the future growth pattern in your projection and the numbers that you're using. That's all. Thank you.
Can I add a comment to this? Because I've been involved in a lot of different talks throughout the state in a sense of agriculture that we're looking at these numbers. But they just come out with a recent study for the census in the state of Vermont about population. There's a lot of talk about it with the education, but you should really look at those population age group numbers, and not to say that maybe that'll happen in 10 years, but the numbers are scary. And the population is getting older by the day, by the minute.
Very much.
And the 17 to 34 age group is leaving Vermont. I'm not saying that this isn't something that may change, but futuristically right now, it appears that young families can't afford to live in Vermont. It's not just Essex, it's the state as a whole.
And I don't disagree with you, Ethan. I'm just talking about like what we see for housing policies and like the thrust and the emphasis of everything we hear is to build these like small, make homes for families.
If someone's talking, we can't hear them.
Oh. To make homes for families. And it's just like making sure, like just understanding that it's accounted for. I agree with you. We're getting very gray.
Thank you. If you want to add, Dennis, go ahead.
No, I guess I'm part of that gray, so I understand. Yeah, I think from what I looked at, I didn't do any far-reaching projections. I looked at a lot of the stuff that you looked at, the demographics, especially throughout New England. And the other states are, even though some of the areas are growing faster than others, it seems to be the same, and for some of the same reasons, that the aging population, the low-flow fixtures, all those kind of things lead to a reduction in water use. Again, life can throw some twists, so that there's no guarantee, and that's why I think you need something in the document that says if we're wrong, and if all of a sudden there's a renewal where families are getting larger and there's all kinds of other stuff going on, I think you make that adjustment. The system has a significant amount of capacity to be able to absorb that either way. You can't absorb it in the last minute, but you can absorb it over the next 10, 15, 20 years and still have enough safety factor that if you have to change, you change.
And I think that some of the changes that we have made to the ordinance, that Dennis has made to the ordinance, allows us that ability to tweak as we go. It's more of a living document than it has been in the past, where it's ordinance set in stone, chisel out the tablet, and boom, there it is. This is something, if we do it right, I think we can put some of this stuff in our not only look at it in our annual budgeting for our fees and connection fees, but also something we can do when he says we're going to pin this to any update to zoning and the changes in the zoning map. We're going to be looking at this a little bit more frequently than we have in the past. Definitely not going to be 16 years.
And
So we can realize some of those changes that we're seeing both in society and any type of environmental impacts that we may have to.
And Kendall's point is well taken on the organic load. If your flow goes lower, your body is still contributing the same amount of waste. So your organic load on the system tends to go up. So although we've got a flow capacity at the wastewater treatment plant, there may be at some future date an organic limit that says you can only put so much into the system, in which case you may have to go back and look at the flow numbers to adjust for the fact that now you've got an organic limit you have to deal with. We're not there yet, but that's kind of maybe down the road on the horizon.
The last time I had discussed that with Chelsea Mandigo, the water quality director for the city of Essex Junction, Kendall's correct. We're more apt to meet that ceiling of our waste quality than we are the flows. We're only at the town of Essex is currently only using half of our allocation within the treatment plant. But I gotta believe we're using a disproportionate more of our quality number that we were allowed to use on a daily basis. So.
Awesome. And I'll just look to see if there's any other public comment. Not seeing anything in the room. Not seeing anything online. So again, I want to thank you both for the amazing presentation, and
thank you for your
just a note to the public and also any board members, but any comments, things you'd wish to see different, anything for the public, direct to the select board, and to the select board, obviously to staff, and we can make changes. This is not the final edition. This is the read it good and make sure you're happy, and we're going to bring it back to a future meeting.
Thank you.
Thanks again.
And I would like to thank Dennis. This has been a heavy lift for the department, and he's really taken up the slack on this, and he's really moved us forward for the department. So
Thank you.
Thanks.
And with that, we move on to business item 6E, discussion about next steps with Upper Main Street Municipal Complex. Karen?
Yeah, so I'll start off. Greg, please hop in and keep me honest here. So just stepping back for 1 minute. We're here after the purchase of 80 to 90 Upper Main Street in 2023. Obviously purchased for the goal of having a new municipal complex to contain municipal buildings, housing, was identified by the community as a preferred use for the other lots that are on the site. And after feedback from the community on town meeting day, we're in the position of deciding what to do next as our sort of next step. So recalling for folks, we're at the design phase for what we refer to as infrastructure, which is essentially the roadway, everything underneath it, and other pieces of town-owned assets that are in that roadway, signage, guardrails, etc. So that's the next step. How we do that is really the discussion we're trying to support here at the board level. So we did get support from the community to move forward. We have a grant that the town has been awarded to support that work. The grant is at $500,000 with the total project cost right now estimated to be $1.5 million. So there's $1 million gap there between what we have funding for from outside grants and what we need to achieve to complete phase 2, which is this right-of-way design. So over the last 6 months or so, staff has been working to identify a funding plan to come up with that $1 million and basically set forward the next 2 or 3 years of work for this project. So I'm gonna on the screen pop up a summary table that shares kind of a more holistic view of the project funding and sources. Give me 2 seconds here. I'm just going to wait for that to pop up here in the room. Great. So up top, this is a sort of phase by phase cost summary. It's one way to sort of slice this data. So we have the first step of collecting information on the site. The second step is to put that information to design and identify the profile of the roadway that will serve the site. The next step is to figure out what's underneath that roadway to support it. So you have to build off the grades that the roadway will be placed at to design utility infrastructure. That's why that's the next step. And then it's listed as 4, but it's really an ongoing step to support all of the tasks 1 through 3. There is outreach, technical support, and there's other minor tasks associated with moving this phase forward, including zoning regulation updates, the sewer allocation discussions that we've just been happening. There's an MOU that we need to honor with a neighboring landowner, etc. So on the right side of this upper table, you can see where the funding will be coming from. So we've got the grant funds that I mentioned. There's an amount that's been identified coming from the water and sewer reserves. It's referred to as capital tax funding, but there is a capital fund called the Municipal Complex Fund within the capital budget that has been assigned both some funding and some interest income. And then we are recognizing the limitations of the Select Board's approval authority by noting TBD for the future years of this project. So we can't restrict or limit the funding in future years because it's not available to us yet. So we've identified a number of possible sources and feel confident that the number that is needed can be met in a number of ways. So moving to the second half of the screen, this is a way to identify by funding source the amounts that are expected. So you can see we've got the same tasks on the left side. Moving to the right through that table, you have the schedule of when we expect those tasks to actually be completed. And then continuing to the right, more detail about each funding source. So again, the grant that we've identified would be $500,000. Certainly we'll be seeking other grants throughout this process, but that's what we've been awarded to date. The water and sewer contribution would be slightly less at $452,000 and some change. That represents the cost of design work associated specific to those utilities, as well as a small contingency. There are capital funds that have been identified as well. So again, these come from the Municipal Complex Fund within the capital budget. There's capital tax revenue that's assigned to that fund, and often interest revenue that has been assigned to that fund as well. And then there's a fund balance assignment that has been made from fiscal year 25 year-end monies of $20,000 to support that technical outreach that I mentioned earlier. So the gap is around $304,000. You see that sort of on the right side, on the second to last column there, of what will be needed to be essentially earmarked in future years. And so the possible solutions there, there's additional capital funds that could be funneled towards the municipal complex, if that makes sense. There's potential additional interest income, other fund balance assignments, donations. We can use impact fees for eligible uses. Again, I mentioned additional grant funds. There's also additional reserves within water sewer, potentially. And if the board ever considers a local option tax, that could potentially be a funding source as well. So just briefly moving to the map of the location. So the phase 2 area does not cover the entire site. So what is on the screen now is just the quick view of what the conceptual plan looks like for this area. The next page I'm going to go to is outlining the project area here. So you can see it is essentially the main loop here serving the center of the site. It does not include infrastructure on the right side that would mainly serve private lots, and it would terminate near where the library is planned, sort of near their parking lot in the event that that is the first building to be constructed. So the last piece of tonight is sharing that we have to request approval from the Northern Borders Regional Commission. So we've been awarded this grant. We have identified a funding plan that we'll discuss with the board, and then we need to request basically approval to proceed. So there's also a letter provided for the board that just indicates we're ready, prepared, asking for your blessing to move forward and start to incur costs that will be reimbursable under the grant. So I'll stop there. I'm happy. I'm going to put it back on the money. I'm assuming that might be the most questions from the top, and happy to answer what I can. Please.
I can just add one
add what
thing, and I
missed.
apologize if I missed this, Karen. We're not looking for any action tonight. That will be the May 4th meeting that we're looking for action. This is really just a great overview from Karen to kind of give you a sense of where we're going and the direction that we have in mind, and to take any feedback before we bring it back to you in a couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Is there any questions from the board? Kendall.
Okay, so the first thing I'll start with is, does the design include the correct sizes and everything needed for the complete total eventual plan build out?
About, like, for example, the water system, the sewer system.
Yes.
Yeah, so those would be identified as in sort of the first phase of the project in terms of the size of the infrastructure to be constructed. Yes.
Okay, my second question is, there's a corner there, Butler's Corner, there was a small piece that when we purchased it, we did not purchase that, but I think we retained an easement to potentially purchase it in the future. This plan doesn't require us to purchase that right now, right?
Correct. Please, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Greg, but my understanding is that's the task that I was noting earlier in terms of the procedural piece of that needs to be worked out with the property owner. I think the MOU that we have currently allows us to continue this work without needing to finalize that transaction. But please.
Yeah, I would agree with what Karen said, Kendall. I'd have to refresh myself with the MOU. I don't have it memorized. I can't remember if there's a purchase price or if it's a land swap or some combination of the two, but that's a good question for us to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that was fairly expensive, if I remember right, and a lot of the plans were based on us purchasing or swapping or doing that. So we haven't made that decision yet. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody was aware of that. The third comment I wanted to make is that I am a little uncomfortable using so many capital funds, and I might suggest that maybe we really look hard at using our interest that we're earning. We're earning about $500,000 of interest, and that is something that no customer really has to come up with. So when it comes to the funding, I think maybe we should really look at that closer. That's all. Thank you.
Is there any other comments from the board?
Ethan, can I jump in?
Shannon.
Hey, thanks. One question I had for the staff on this proposal. We've obviously had many discussions with the public about putting community gardens here in the interim period until we get buildings and things in place. Where does that fit into this plan? Obviously, I know that would involve getting water to the site earlier, things like that. I know this is you have a lot here and you've discussed about this, but I want to see that initial step of using this property for community gardens ahead of time.
I'm happy to at least initially respond to that. I think certainly we can explore that as part of this process, Shannon. At least the initial legwork that I understand has been done on that is the challenge in getting a curb cut to this property from Route 15 without a substantial amount of engineering and access. And so that could be potentially a sort of, I'll call it, paper hurdle to get over. I don't know that we've explored that to the extent it sounds like you're looking for us to do that. So I can speak with the folks doing that work and learn more to come back with you.
Yeah, Shannon, and I'll just add, Parks and Rec, as you know, has been working on exploring community gardens. They've done a survey. It's on their work plan. I think part of the way they're approaching it is to figure out what is the right site or sites for community gardens to serve the community. This site at Upper Main Street may or may not be the ideal site. Karen mentioned some potential challenges there, but it is absolutely on the radar of where we can get some community gardens into Essex.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any other questions from the board? No? Okay. I have one comment and then one question. So my comment would be to you, Kendall, about the interest revenue, and I would just remind both of us that there is interest earned on capital monies, so I'd be careful what we use for interest accrued. And then My second question would be, do we have to identify the 304,000 before they proceed with the grant?
No.
No.
So you're
Okay.
committing to provide it.
Okay.
In the letter.
Okay.
You can decide at a later date to make an appropriation that supports that.
Okay. Meg?
Just curious, is there a deadline for us to accept the grant money?
So there was and there is. The deadline was March 1st. We requested an extension, which we were granted. So we have 1 full year to request the notice to proceed. The piece about that that's important, Meg, is that it doesn't extend us on the other end. So we don't get an extension on the completion date. So we're just keeping in mind that that extension sort of is eating into your project performance period.
Right. Got it. Okay. Thank you.
And just for some background on that, Meg, too, this has been discussed thoroughly by the board a couple of times, and the consensus was to bring it to a public vote. And we know the result of the ballot this year, the public voted in favor. So it's important that we move forward in some capacity with thoughtful planning.
Yeah. Okay. I appreciate it.
I'll just offer, just to round that out, the deadline for completion of the work it's September of 2028. We are internally setting a deadline of the end of June of 2028. To give us some.
Okay. To account for essentially using the grant before it ends. Right. Okay. Great.
Build in a buffer there. Yeah.
Yep. Excellent.
Karen, just to ask a question there, that puts us accepting the grant within the next couple of months and hopefully locking somebody down by fall in order to achieve that goal.
Right. So we're based on, our engineers' estimates around 24 months to do this work. So from
fall.
we will need to get started. I think once we have someone on board, a lot of it will keep rolling. Yeah.
Okay, if there's no other questions from the board, I am going to look for the public comment. Seeing none, I entertain public comment. None in the room. Is there any online? Bringing it back to the board, I think we've all made comment here, and nobody has any standout opposition. There's no action listed. So we will ask anybody with any extra comments to email staff, and same with the public, and we will move on to our next business item, which is item 6F. Discussion about select board process for strategic planning and annual work plan for fiscal year 2027.
Hi, so just wanted to get this on your radar. Staff is proposing that we do this a little bit differently this year. Typically not too long after the new select board takes seat, you have your organizational meeting. Typically mid to late spring, we'll start talking about the work plan for the coming fiscal year. The past few years, we've done that sort of as a one night event, 1 day event, where the select board will sort of sit down, review values, review long-term goals, review work plan ideas for the coming year, and then it's finalized at the next meeting. So a few changes proposed this year. We're looking at spreading this out over a few different meetings. There's a timeline in the memo, which I'll touch on in a moment, but wanted to kind of take some time, rather than trying to pack it all into one meeting, taking a look at where we've been, what we've done in the past year, and where we're looking to go. One of the big changes that we're looking to propose is to really incorporate what we're calling, staff is referring to as source documents. That's going to be stuff like your town plan, the economic development plan that was adopted today. In the past year, you've done the Keystone Connector, the active transportation plan. There's also the recreation needs assessment coming up, the conceptual master plan we just talked about for Upper Main Street. So there's a whole host of different documents that are out there that have been vetted by the community, vetted by the select board, approved by some combination of those two, depending on what it is. And so really wanting to tie those plans so they don't just sit on the shelf, so they become our action plan and our vision for the future. Still want to take a look at the values that the select board identified a couple of years ago, the long-term goals. There were a few tweaks made last year, so hopefully those kind of become a living document, but something that keeps us on a trajectory and not a total shift of direction. So looking at the timeline, Tonight, we're discussing the process and expectations. The idea would be on May 4th to present you with a list of source documents, review your values, your long-term goals, approving those things. We'd also be providing progress updates from the fiscal 26 work plan for departments and the select board. Review some parking lot items that came up in fiscal 26. And whether it's May 4th or May 18th, but starting to look at the mandatory items for fiscal 27. You know, what stuff is required by contracts, by grant agreements, by statutory limitations or requirements. That would bring us to May 18th, where we would have draft work plans from departments that also incorporate these things, these mandatory items, the work plans, the source documents that we have. Also starting to review any select board items that you want to bring forward. We can get those ahead of time, but review them probably in depth on May 18th. Start to talk about assigning priorities to those items. Also talking about capacity and staff capacity to take those things on. Ideally, a lot of the stuff will just kind of come together between what your goals are, what departments are working on, especially if we tie back to those source documents. Then getting into June, we'd be looking at finishing the setting of different priorities, hopefully putting together a final draft for the work plan, and then by the end of June, approving the select board's work plan for fiscal year 27. Certainly the option is there if you want to have a dedicated strategic planning session in addition to all of that work. We're happy to try to accommodate that, or happy to accommodate that. But wanted to discuss tonight and see how this sits with you, and just going to get any feedback before we start to finalize and make some more cohesive plans. And with that, I will welcome any feedback.
Meg, go ahead.
I'm just curious, is this a typical timeline from the way that, it's been done in the past to putting work plans together, getting them done by the middle of June?
Yeah, I think normally we sat down and tried to do it in one day.
Yeah,
So,
I think we tried to do
this
it
is different.
in May or June, Meg, but yeah, a lot of times it's been okay, let's do it tonight. And we obviously work to get you information, the select board information up to that point, but I think this will help everyone be able to digest things, not feel like it's all packed into one evening of a few hours.
Okay, but it wouldn't necessarily put us back at all. By doing it this way, it sounds like it'll follow a similar timeline.
Correct.
Okay.
Meg, I think one of the important things here is that in years past, it's always been, strategic planning. We all get together with a great grand list of ideas, and then we try to morph it into our list from last year. And I think the important part of this process, as it's laid out now, is that we're actually going to take the time to review what we've put on that list, identify progress or lack of progress for certain items, and really, get that compacted before we, have our 12 new ideas that we pile on top. Because before it's always been ranking of priority and some things with deadlines. So I think I'm actually kind of excited about it. I'm a little bit nervous about the length of the meeting. But I think that this is going to be a more productive process, given the fact that we'll have time to review the information, look at what we've done or not done, and then really give that a value before we put more work on top of staff already. And is there any other board member comments? Oh, sorry, Meg, you have a comment?
No, I was just gonna say okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Andy?
Yeah, I like this approach. I very much like the fact that we're pulling in the other plans that have been approved, as Greg said, either by the board or by the voters. Rather than leaving our plans on the shelf, I'd like to tie key things into our strategic plan. I'm happy to see that. And I think, as Ethan said, some of our meetings can run pretty long, and some of these topics will take longer than others. But But I think that's no different than in the past. I seem to recall taking multiple meetings to nail down priorities. And so that may be the case here too. But I like the proposal.
Kendall?
I might suggest, I'm sure it's probably already in there, but we haven't really spent a lot of time on water and sewer issues. And I think they're gonna be a bigger need, there's gonna be a bigger need for that going forward in the future, so I just would suggest that. Thank you.
That's a good note, and I think it's also something to think about with the schedule is making sure that that public hearing process is going to be beyond June before we start that.
If you're talking, Ethan, about the ordinances, we're probably going to be hopefully starting that end of June, July.
June? Okay.
If I can ask Kendall a question, Kendall, do you have specifics? Do you mean the water sewer ordinances? Do you mean rates, infrastructure, all of the above, something else?
All the above. All the above.
Shannon, do you have anything?
Yeah, I would just think this looks great. I like spreading it out. I like giving it its due diligence. And I also think it's good to note that we can always add a special meeting if we feel we need more time. So this is good. Looking forward to a good discussion.
Awesome. Thanks, Shannon. Okay. If there's no other comments from the board, I'm going to bring it open to the public real quick. And I look in the room for any public comment. And I look online for any public comment. So this memo is for discussion, so I think we can make a email if we find any changes that we'd like to, and then would the board like to bring back this schedule and approve it to stick with it, or how would we like to proceed future?
I appreciate, if I can
Yeah.
chime in, I appreciate the feedback. I'm glad to hear you're all at least mostly supportive of this. I think staff will just start working on May 4th, starting to get stuff ready. There might be some slight adjustments depending on what we can pull together or how things shake out, but I think we'll just make our best effort to stick more or less to the schedule and keep us on pace for approving the work plan by June 15th.
Okay. Awesome. Well, that brings us to our last business item. We amended the agenda earlier, so item on the paper there, 5E, is now business item 6G, and it's consider approval of first, second, third class and outside consumption liquor license renewals. And let me pull this open real quick. I can run over this really quick. Okay, so we have in front of us the liquor license renewal for, I can read the businesses if anybody would wish, but there's a large list of first class, second class, and then there's the properties that follow. Kendall, I'll look to you for comments or concerns.
The main concern I have, and I have mentioned it before, is that we are potentially awarding licenses to those that are delinquent. And I know that they are the tenants versus the owner, but we don't know the specifics of what their leases require and whether it does involve the owner in the license as well. And the license is a privilege. And really, it's the one thing that the select board does. I would be curious to know, is there any other criteria that we would use to refuse a liquor license as a select board?
I can't remember any being denied in my time here, but I think certainly if there were issues with over-serving, serving minors, not having people with their server's license, those are issues that we would be raising and giving you some consideration as to whether or not to approve those licenses. That's the primary reason that we have the police review the liquor license applications as well, to make sure there's not any issues as far as serving of alcohol at those establishments.
Fair enough.
I'll offer just in the research around this topic, in trying to better understand what role the board is playing as a municipal liquor control commissioner. The state has suggested boards have wide latitude about what they will determine in terms of criteria for issuing a license, but that it needs to be consistent and it can't be arbitrary. Those were the two pieces that they noted. So just keep that in mind.
Then I would go ahead and I would ask if we had an owner operator that was delinquent in their taxes that was requesting a liquor license, would we approve that?
I guess this is more of a board question, but if I can just chime in briefly, I think it's sometimes going to be really difficult to know who the owner is. Sometimes it's going to be pretty clear and cut and dry and straightforward. Other times there's going to be tenants who might have partners who might be the landlord. There could be partners that we don't know about based on company names and property name owners and names of property owners, excuse me. I think I could envision it becoming a difficult amount of detective work to always track that down. And sometimes it might be straightforward, sometimes it may not be.
Thank you. And my final comment is, do we have any specific town ordinance or policy that specifies taxes and liquor licenses? Just curious.
In the research that I was doing to support this, there are policies associated with the police review that's conducted. I believe there's 3 separate policies about what they're looking for and how they'll interpret that information. I'm not aware of anything formal beyond that.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll just say the town charter contains penalties for delinquent tax payments. There's the penalty itself and then interest charges after that. We do work to get people onto approved payment plans even when they are delinquent so that they can be chipping away at payments. That would prevent somebody's property from going to tax sale per se, so not quite apples to apples here. The owners or the properties that are delinquent in this case, I believe, are all by 1 or 2 companies. We have an agreement in place as of today. It's not been signed yet, but we've agreed to the conditions of repayment on those taxes.
Okay, that was my final question, was that if we have a formal agreement that basically puts them into the category where they're okay, because we accept that. If we have an agreement with somebody for taxes, they're basically not delinquent anymore. So that was my question.
It's not formal yet, but I expect it to be signed this week, perhaps as soon as tomorrow.
That was all I had. Thank you.
Andy, do you still have your hand up? No.
Greg, I think covered what I was where I was going with that, because I remember I seem to recall that we had a discussion before about trying to establish a policy, and we went through some of the same discussion. I don't know, just a reminder that I think we've covered some of this ground, but I'm good.
Okay. Any other board member comments?
Ethan, I'd just jump in. I'd say, as we talked about this at length last year, I think that if we move forward with a similar practice as what's in this memo of listing out what the status of the delinquent taxes and the plans in place and things like that is, it's a good policy to keep the practice of noting their tax status. But I do think that the line that states that there are other consequences in place that affect, those for missed taxes is a good reminder that this is just one detail of a full portfolio of how liquor license is put together. So thank you, staff, for including it this time. Let's make sure we do it moving forward. If we do continue to track taxes in these, I know that Ethan, you and I discussed that, it was never a voted on policy that we'd include this. It just kind of became practice. But if we are, I want to make sure for those times that we see that there is a delinquency, that we have at least the details, a couple paragraphs describing what's going on.
Thanks, Shannon. Okay, I don't see any other hands. I'm gonna look to the public for comment. No comment in the room. Is there any comment online? No comment online. I look to the board for a motion.
Applications for businesses located in Vestas listed in the April 15th, 2026 memo for the first and second class liquor licenses.
Motion made by Shannon. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Meg.
Just a question. Do we need to specifically say outdoor consumption as well, or is that not needed?
It'd be nice to include third class and outdoor consumption.
Shannon, did you catch that? Can you amend your motion to include first, second, third, and outdoor consumption?
We can amend that. That's why I didn't see it listed in the memo, but that's fine.
Meg, are you comfortable seconding the amended motion?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. So the motion has been amended by Shannon and seconded by Meg. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, signify by saying nay.
Nay.
Nay. Okay, I'm going to have to do roll calls just because we're online. Andy?
Aye.
Aye. Meg?
Aye.
Aye. Kendall?
Nay.
Nay. And Shannon?
Aye.
Aye. And I'm in favor. So the motion passes 4-1. And that brings us to the reading file. Are there any board member comments?
Yes, Ethan, I don't know who's hands up, but when you have a chance, I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead.
I want to congratulate the town of Essex and specifically the Conservation and Trails Committee for getting us the 2025 Tree City USA designation again, as well as the Parks and Rec Department for the wonderful grant that's going to be helping to make the trails at Indian Park, Indian Brook much more accessible.
Thank you, Shannon. Are there any other board member comments? Kendall?
Yeah, I just want to thank the administrative staff for everything they do, and especially Dan for his investment updates and his information on how our budget's going. It looked like we're in a pretty good spot considering the hard winter we had. And thank you for the information on that new investment potential. That's very interesting. Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Seeing none, I'd like to just take a moment to thank the Parks and Rec Department. I didn't get to attend, but I attended virtually in my mind, watching them fill buckets full of trout and dump them into Indian Brook today. So just all around props to great staff there and a great community event that they put on this morning. And do we... Oh, are you good, Shannon?
I was just saying, well said. That
Oh, yeah. Thanks. Are we needing an executive session? No? Okay.
Yeah, nope, not unless you want one for...
No?
Nope.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
I got Shannon moved to adjourn. I'm looking for a second.
Second.
Andy, motions to adjourn are non-debatable. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion. All those opposed signify by saying nay. Motion carries 5-0. Motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Thank you very much for attending, and we'll see you.